1.2 billion people gearing up to get rich. The last communist giant is tasting capitalism. And the world had better take notice.
Emerging Powers is made possible by the Ford Motor Company, where quality is job one.
Emerging Powers is supported by IBM.
With additional funding provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the annual financial support of viewers like you.
Hello, I'm Consuelo Mack of the Wall Street Journal. The United States dominates global markets today. But as we near the turn of the century, other countries approach center stage. Among them, one stands out, with the biggest population on Earth, the world's largest standing army, nuclear weapons, and the fastest growing economy in the world. China is the largest emerging power on the planet. Deborah Wong is an American journalist and the former ABC News correspondent from Beijing.
What are you buying? Pearl necklaces.
She has spent the last 6 years working as a reporter in China and Hong Kong.
What kind of work? What kind of things do you do?
We go and eat. In the evenings, we get together to have fun and go dancing. That's right, we dance in the evening.
In the whole country, Shanghai's older generation is the luckiest. We really have it the best. It's even better than overseas. Hong Kong, America, Australia. It's the best here.
She just came back from Australia.
So Shanghai's older people have it the best.
But our lives are not as restrained as you might think.
We're all over 50 years old.
How does the present compare with 4 or 5 years ago?
It's much better now.
What's better? Why is it better?
The people on the street dress better. They eat better. It's pretty good.
Why is China developing so fast?
The economic reforms, of course.
I first came to China in 1980, when the country was just beginning to embark on economic reform. At that time, this city, Beijing, was a slow-paced, sleepy capital, and the sound you most noticed was the tinkling of bicycle bells in the streets. Since then, China has undergone an almost total transformation, and the bicycle bells have been drowned out by the roar of modernization. That roar is engulfing all of China as the country transforms itself brick by brick. Hotels, housing, highways, here and everywhere, construction blankets the country with a thin layer of dust. And yet China's rebirth is accompanied by continued political repression. Countless contradictions echo here. Poor and rich, primitive and modern, communist and capitalist. China is all these things at once. An emerging superpower with nuclear weapons. The world's biggest population. The largest standing army. and the fastest growing economy. Tonight, we meet a few citizens of the new China to see how economic growth is transforming the soul of this society. He is the perfect symbol of new China, a rags-to-riches millionaire.
In the past, a 9-inch black and white television was a luxury. But now we have a 25-inch color TV, even a VCR and a camcorder.
When Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping abandoned communist claims of equality and said it was okay for some people to get rich first, Zhu Shiming took him at his word. With an initial investment of $200 US, Zhu Shiming opened a small shop for a scarce commodity, Western-style women's clothing. He bought a used sewing machine and started sewing.
At that time in Shanghai, buying clothes was very difficult. Clothing only came in blue, gray, white, just those few colors, and green, also green. We didn't have colorful, pretty clothes. The young women especially liked pretty clothes, so they would come to our store and be satisfied. In this sense, our business grew very fast. In the following month, I added another sewing machine.
Today, he oversees his own textile and restaurant empire. Just 8 years ago, he was a board worker at a state-run company.
And then I went into business, or according to a Chinese saying, jumped into the sea.
Jumping in was a big risk.
When I first started, I had the feeling that it was very dangerous. What would I do if I failed?
Zhu Shiming graduated from high school in 1966. Graduates of this class and the classes of 67 and 68 are called Lao San Jie, or Old Three Classes. They were separated from their families and sent to the countryside at the start of one of China's most traumatic upheavals, the Cultural Revolution.
I took the train for 3 days and 2 nights to the northeast part of China. We had nothing to eat. We had no clothes to wear, and nobody was there to take care of us. We were just left at the countryside. And also, the farmers didn't even want us to be there. Why didn't they want us there? It was because they had limited land. They could only provide for so many people. If you went there, you only added to their burden. After you went there, they had to share their food.
The Cultural Revolution was Mao Zedong's attempt to maintain absolute control of the country. Millions of young Chinese, so-called Red Guards, worked with peasants on people's communes.
The more people there were, the less food each person had. Plus, they had to take care of you, and you didn't know how to farm. So the farmers really didn't want us there. Those years left us 10 years behind the outside world. Those 10 years made our generation a generation filled with willpower and fortitude. So sometimes I am grateful for the Cultural Revolution. Sometimes in my business I encounter unpleasant things, setbacks, or some obstacles during negotiations. During those times I rely on my willpower. I rely on those 10 years that taught me endurance. I grit my teeth and continue.
Zhu Shiming's life has changed completely.
At that time, if you had even a rundown bicycle to go to work, You felt it was very convenient. Now I have my own driver when I go to work. I believe that a car can represent a person's position and social status, so that's why I chose to buy a nice car. But the crux of what we are seeking is not just life's pleasures, it is the business. We want to make the business grow. We want it to be big and successful. This is our ideal and goal.
The Cultural Revolution ended in 1976, but it's being repackaged for the 1990s. Theme restaurants are a new fad, where nostalgic diners can eat dishes like the educated youth's reunion platter under artifacts of the era. Shang Xujian is a part owner.
It's a place for the old three classes to talk together, meet together, chat, or have dinner together. For example, people who were lovers back then, they probably aren't now, can see each other. In my opinion, the thoughts of Chairman Mao weren't from one person, but rather symbolized the wisdom of that generation and the Chinese nation.
Today, Chairman Mao's statue stands flanked by ads for beer. In a sign that the Cultural Revolution has come full circle, Mao buttons and trinkets are now for sale. But the legacy of the Cultural Revolution goes beyond nostalgia.
Mao did lead the Chinese Revolution, and he made many mistakes after the revolution. And in fact, I believe he committed crimes by creating things like the Cultural Revolution.
Shan Weijian is an investment banker in Hong Kong, where he raises millions of dollars for China's construction. During the Cultural Revolution, Shan worked as a peasant near the Gobi Desert. The old three classes, the Lao Sanjie, have come of age, and some experts think they occupy a remarkable role in the new China.
It is correct to say that Lao Sanjie, or those people who have experienced the Cultural Revolution, who have suffered during the Cultural Revolution, now form the backbone of the Chinese economy, politics, culture, and perhaps many other things.
Economic reform has unleashed a lively, freewheeling capitalism across China. The Chinese are discovering newfound freedoms to choose their own jobs, buy their own homes, and control their own financial destinies. For young people especially, it is a world of new opportunity. We met with Huang Qihong, just one Chinese woman who is charting her own career. As one of Shanghai's leading cosmetics dealers, Huang has made a small fortune selling products. She teaches daily classes on the finer points of applying makeup.
Compare for a second the left half and the right half. It's very natural, right? But it's only one shade lighter. So I ruined my voice. But I know that success has its price. And also, I feel that this voice, many people say it sounds sexy, right? So I think that's pretty good. I'd like to invest in a field related to beauty, like a beauty salon or a gift shop, a cosmetics store, or something like that.
The tightly packed quarters of China's cities are fertile ground for door-to-door sales. Today, this retired neighbor has enough extra money to buy cosmetics.
Before, just think, we had nothing to protect our skin. Now in China, standards are so much higher and our quality of life has risen. Even we older people can protect our skin. So I told my children to buy me some and I'd try it. Actually, it worked.
At home, the daughter's work is a big part of the parents' life.
She's my daughter. Our hearts are connected. So sometimes I try my best to think of ways to help her.
Huang's father is retired from the Chinese army. Now he too lends his daughter a hand with sales at home. His own work life was very different from his daughter's.
We did professional work. Whatever you studied, that's what you worked in. It was impossible to change your job whenever you wanted to. In the past, that's just the way society was. In the past, we worked from when we were young until we were old. Now, in the middle of your career, you can quit your job. You can change your career. You can do whatever you want.
The Shanghai Night Bazaar features dumplings and noodles, simple, popular fare for local working people. But a skyscraper may go up here, and then the market will be torn down. As new displaces old, not every merchant is thriving.
The Nanyang Group swallowed up this land and is forcing us to leave. To be frank, in the past we were just country bumpkins. We weren't regular business people. But as long as we had this stand, we felt secure and we were happy. We felt stable with this kind of work and we were happy. And the Nanyang Group bought this land and took away our rice bowl.
Tonight, they pack up their carts for the last time.
In a word, we just don't have any backing. If my father were Mayor Huang Ju, it would be a different story. It wouldn't matter where they wanted to start construction. It wouldn't matter to me or my business.
But most Chinese have been only too happy to jump on the capitalist bandwagon. And sometimes years of pent-up desires can overflow. As China began to develop its stock markets a few years ago, throngs of eager investors rushed in. In 1992, when the market at the southern city of Shenzhen offered options to buy shares, crowds grew to tens of thousands. Riots broke out and 2 people died. China's new markets have a brief history of chaos combined with hope. Today, Beijing's huge new commodity exchange is a symbol of China's aspirations. Now, why is it that Chinese are so drawn towards this market?
Well, because that's the market probably can make someone, rich the quickest way. So
as a regulator, Jesse Wong works to make China's markets safer for investors.
I think most of the users, the investors, they're just gambling.
It's gambling.
It is.
And the Chinese seem to love it.
Well, it is.
The love of gambling carries over into Shanghai neighborhoods, where new stock brokerage houses dot the streets. Friends meet here both to pass the time and to learn the art of trading.
People say it's worth investing. I'm retired. I don't have anything to do at home. Since this might be a worthwhile investment, I'd like to try it.
People here have one of the world's highest savings rates, 33%. It's hard to get loans or credit, so emergencies and big-ticket consumer goods have to be paid for in cash.
Our senior leader, Mr. Deng Xiaoping, had a very famous saying, said that 摸着石头过河. What English meaning is that crossing the river by feeling stones.
Crossing the river by feeling the stones is Deng's motto for moving step by step to a market economy. China first tries one innovation, like the markets, and expands it if it works. This is in contrast to the former Soviet Union, which attempted to make its transition to capitalism overnight. After spending 11 years in the countryside during the Cultural Revolution, Jesse Wang got a PhD in accounting and trained in the U.S. He works for the equivalent of $200 a month.
I think making money, of course, is good, but it is not the only thing good. If the economy is good, and millions of people can benefit, from this fast growth economy, and then I would also enjoy my, portion. What I'm doing is to set up Chinese Wall Street, and you never get a chance because the U.S. Wall Street is there for 200 years. So that's my historical opportunity or chance. That's what I'm doing.
Constructing China's Wall Street may be a milestone in its move towards capitalism. But the country is far from giving up on socialism altogether. More than 100 million people work for companies owned by the state, companies like the Shanghai No. 1 TV factory. Socialist monuments, these factories take care of every aspect of a worker's life. This is the first week of daycare for Yang Weilie and Hui Guofang's 1.5-year-old daughter, Yang Ming. And she's not very happy.
We bring our daughter to the factory kindergarten. We don't worry about her when we are at work. We feel more at ease and don't worry about her welfare or whether she is being naughty. All the nurses there are professionals, so I don't have to worry about my child when I am working.
Yang Weilie is a manager here, and his wife, Hui Guofang, works on the assembly line just down the hall. This was Mao's dream, the communist utopia. A factory that took care of workers from cradle to grave. Food, education, retirement, medical care, housing, all provided at low cost to obedient, motivated workers. That's the dream. The reality is China's economic nightmare. Over 100,000 companies, up to 2/3 of them losing money.
One company I know, for example, has 4 schools and a number of primary schools, 1 university. That's a lot of social burden. And some companies own fire stations, police stations. One company I know even owns a court.
With help from the factory, Yang and his wife just bought their first apartment. They joined the factory right out of high school. This is the only life they've known.
I've thought about jumping into the sea, but everyone has limits. I don't have enough skills and my capabilities are limited. But I am also the type of person who knows his place. And I also observe the rules. And I lack a kind of pioneering spirit, because jumping into the sea is very risky. And I lack that spirit.
In factories across the country, workers like Yang are desperate to hold on to their safe state jobs. By some estimates, China spends around $50 billion a year to prop up these aging holdovers of the socialist system. Printing money to finance these loans, in turn, keeps inflation high. So far, officials have shied away from radical reform of state industry. fearing that unemployment and dislocation could weaken their political control. But some experts believe that China's private sector has grown as much as it can. Unless the government becomes more daring with the state sector, China's future economic growth will be at risk. China faces similar challenges in the countryside. More than 70% of the Chinese people live in the countryside, where for centuries they toiled in abject poverty. They were the chief supporters of the Communist Revolution, and when Chairman Mao came to power in 1949, he rewarded them by giving each family a small plot of land. This was a mind-boggling step.
Chairman Mao did a lot for China. If Chairman Mao hadn't established New China, we would still be poor, right?
But by the late 1950s, Mao had forced peasants onto communes, and by 1976, his policies had left the countryside on the verge of economic collapse.
Oh, forget about 20 years ago. I was a woman with 6 children. The youngest was 2 months old, and the oldest hadn't finished school. How hard was it? I survived, didn't I?
Just 2 years later, the new government of Deng Xiaoping began abolishing the commune system and gave farmers freedom to grow and sell their own crops. Agricultural output soared and peasants prospered. Scratch a peasant, get a capitalist, says one China expert. Many peasants put their newfound wealth, however modest, right into small businesses of their own.
Make bricks? This job will increase our peasants' income.
Called township and village enterprises, peasant-owned businesses are China's most successful economic reform. Big and small, low-tech and high-tech, they are the very engine of China's growth. Huang Jinyuan is a farmer in Sichuan province. He works with his neighbors in a village brick factory founded in 1981.
Now I make about 280 or 300 yuan from the brick factory each month. Now I get to keep whatever I've made. No matter where I work and whether I am busy or not, the more I work, the more I get. I don't have to pay the brigade anymore.
Huang earns about $35 each month, and he spends 2/3 of it on something he hopes will break the family's dependence on farming: the education of his daughter Huang Min. She's preparing to take China's most important test, the National College Entrance Exam.
We only expect she will try her best. It is best to pass, but if she fails, at least she has a piece of field. She can work on that.
It's hard for Huang's family to save money.
Why? To be honest, because school and family expenses are so high. Our income just covers it.
Economic reform has solved many problems in the Chinese countryside. Most peasants no longer live in grinding poverty, and some are even becoming rich. At the same time, modernization comes at great cost. Each small factory, each new road consumes one more plot of land. China's cropland is disappearing. As it goes, so goes the nation's ability to feed its 1.2 billion people. This is one new problem that will affect food supply throughout the world. And as land disappears, more and more farmers become unemployed. So they leave their villages to go as far as China's boats and trains can take them, searching for opportunity wherever they can find it. Since the government recently relaxed strict residency laws, they have more freedom to move from town to town. They join what's called the Liudong Renkou, the floating population.
We are the men who use shoulder poles. To put it nicely, we are shoulder-carrying labor. To say it straight, well, that would be swearing.
As many as 100 million people, all unemployed. China's population of migrants is almost as big as the entire workforce of the United States. These men are farmers who have migrated to the city of Chongqing on the Yangtze River. Called the stick soldiers, this army works as Chinese men have worked for centuries. Many consider themselves lucky.
The people like me with shoulder poles just don't have much to do at home when it is not the harvest season. So we come here to make some spending money. I think this work is good, meaningful, very good. It's free and flexible. In the factory, there are a lot of rules.
On a very good day, stick soldiers make up to $10 US. They save most of it to send home. But like many citizens of China, they are subject to the whims of those above them.
Sometimes the security officials are terrible. They often defraud us shoulder pole men. They dress in official suits with official insignia on their caps and collar badges, but what they do is racketeering. The other day, I went to the leather market on High School Road, and I encountered them. They asked me if I had a license. I said no. They punched me and took all my money away. All of my savings for a month and 10 days were taken away. Now what they do is make money for themselves.
If you look at the Chinese history, and there's a Chinese saying that the Chinese are not afraid of poverty, but they are afraid of disparity income distribution. And if everybody is poor, as we were, let's say 20 years ago, it was more or less okay. But if there was a group of wealthy people and large group of very poor people, that's the condition for revolution. That's how the Chinese Revolution of 1940s occurred. It happened with poverty, starvation. The same is true today. If you have a group of people who are extremely wealthy and a large group of people who cannot make good living, there will be a social trouble.
Moving from farm to city, the floating population supplies a nearly endless stream of cheap labor. They work for as little as $1 a day, often in hazardous conditions. Thousands die each year. These are the men who make the bricks, carry the wood, and saw the timber that is the foundation of China's Industrial Revolution. China's new massive migration has weakened traditional family structures and left millions of people on the edges of society. Increased crime, unemployment, and homelessness have followed.
Take, for example, the city of Shanghai. People say that migrant workers in this city number about 2 million. Makes streets very crowded and make crowds out jobs for the people who do live here.
The Chinese Communist Party has always had an unspoken covenant to provide for its rural people. In the 1990s, that covenant is coming under increasing strain. The income gap is widening here. Some people are becoming very, very rich. Liu Yonghao is the Frank Perdue of China.
Last year, in 1994, I took over 18 companies. They were all losing large amounts of money. Some of them were nearly bankrupt.
Liu Yonghao is one of the richest men in China. After a huge success selling chickens, he became the major manufacturer of pig feed.
This pig doesn't get it. He's American. He only understands English.
He now runs the biggest private conglomerate in the country. It's called the Hope Group. 13 years ago, Liu taught at a middle school in Chengdu, where he made less than $20 a month. He might have remained a poor teacher if economic reform hadn't given him the freedom to quit and to try something else. In 1982, he and his 3 brothers sold their bicycles and watches to start a small poultry farm. Using metal from an old gas tank, they built a makeshift incubator, but there was no electricity. So to generate heat, they began by digging a tunnel with rails under the building.
On the rails, we put a stove, and in it, we put some charcoal. When we needed to heat up the incubator, we would light the coal and push it under the building. We called it a mechanized semi-automated incubation building.
There were constant innovations. The brothers also made sacrifices. When they had no place else to go, the Lius slept with the chickens. After chickens, in 1987 came pig feed. China was getting richer, and people could afford to eat more and more of their favorite meat, pork. By providing peasants with cheap, high-quality feed for their pigs, the Liu brothers hit a consumer wave on the nose. Today, the Lius employ 10,000 workers and have 34 pig feed mills scattered throughout China. Their lives have been intimately tied to the lives of ordinary Chinese peasants. Like peasants for hundreds of years before them, the Lius have 吃苦, they've tasted bitterness.
We were very young during the Cultural Revolution. My father was branded a traitor and spy. So he was made a cattle herder in the mountains. I would walk 20 or 30 kilometers every Sunday to give him some food. I did this because he didn't get enough food in his ration. When I brought rice to him, he would be tending the cattle. He would just stand and look at me for an hour or two. I would just stand and look at the cattle and where my father was standing. When we met, we would embrace each other and cry very hard. Our ability to succeed and endure hardships today is deeply connected to the hardships we endured at that time.
At the forefront of China's rebirth in the countryside, Liu Yonghao takes a patriotic pride in his success.
Someone said outside of China, a Chinese person is a dragon. Inside of China, a Chinese person is a worm. I felt that this saying was wrong. I thought that even inside China, Chinese people could still be dragons. I think that overseas there are many enterprises, especially the very large ones, that think that China will develop. They see Asia as the fastest developing economy in the world. The fastest developing economy in Asia is mainland China. The fastest developing part of China's economy is private industry. The biggest and fastest growing of these, they say, is our Hope Group. Thus, we have some opportunities.
Economic freedom. That's perhaps the most important change washing over China today. Ordinary people now have the right to carve out and control their own economic destinies. But that's not the only change. This is a government that in the past controlled virtually every aspect of people's lives, from where they lived to where they worked to what they read in the morning papers. Not anymore. As capitalism sweeps across China, it brings technology with it. And worldwide, technology has a way of undermining government control. In China, it's found on rooftops, beaming Western news and entertainment programs directly into homes. Fax machines, international direct dial phone lines, and the internet provide information out of the reach of the Communist Party. Underground publishing is flourishing. Chinese consumers have more access to uncensored books, magazines, and pornography than ever before. And even in the tightly controlled arena of state television, old rules are giving way.
Whether it has reached the level of an information explosion is very difficult to say. But no matter what, there are more channels on TV. The audience has many choices. They can watch whatever they choose.
Welcome to Oriental Studio Live, China's first live call-in television show. Live talk television. This is a remarkable new format in a country where public silence has been the norm.
Some people thought this program would not attract audiences because people like entertainment shows better. But we knew that China had been under the influence of traditional thought for a long time, and people were restrained in expressing themselves.
It's a weekly show, and producers choose a different topic for each broadcast. Tonight, it's damage to the environment. Hours before going on the air, guest experts get together behind the scenes for a warm-up debate.
In the area of environmental protection, the government plays two roles. The first is the role of boss. The company belongs to the government, so the government is the boss. But it is the government that has to take care of environmental protection. Therefore, it must be the judge also. Playing these roles at the same time is contradictory.
This heated dialogue won't hit the actual airwaves. Once the show goes on the air, guests are more restrained.
Usually when you ride in a bus, you can see black smoke coming out of the cars. Then we inhale it. I hope we can escape this situation as soon as possible.
Economic reform has put Chinese producers in a ratings race. They must make money and attract viewers and advertisers for the very first time. These are market forces, and they've set in motion some early stirrings of public discourse. It's tempting to speculate where they might lead. For acclaimed film director Zhang Yimou, freedom of expression in the media hasn't gone far enough.
Our country, in terms of economics, in my opinion, is very open. But, for example, in terms of culture or movies, because my country's government looks at movies as a tool of ideology, they require that movies bear the responsibility of educating the people. So in reality, it's very open economically, but in terms of ideology, it's still very strict.
Seen here on the set of his movie To Live, Zhang believes that economic reform is profoundly changing the Chinese people.
The human spirit always wishes to be better, wishes that one's life would be even better, wishes for even more money, wishes to change one's fate. There's always this feeling of unrest. Overall, I think that motion is the main characteristic of today's China. Everyone wants to start moving, wants to come alive.
For much of the 1980s, disco dancing was called spiritual pollution brought in from the West.
I remember when I was young, I went to a dance. We had to dance the waltz or the foxtrot. There was one couple that started to dance disco, then an old guy wearing a red armband went over to them and stopped them saying, "Don't dance like that." Sometimes when I'm in a disco, I think it's impossible that there is a disco scene like this here in Beijing.
Even today, it's touch and go. Discos are periodically shut down by officials, only to open again a few weeks later. Here, they listen to Western music, but increasingly, China is developing its own homegrown rock and roll. Punk rocker He Yong and disc jockey Zhang Youdai live on China's creative hardcore fringe.
He Yong, what do you think young people want?
They want money. They want women. They want cars, beepers, cellular phones. They want all of the very best things. Without money, you feel lousy. With money, you're decadent.
If he sounds a little sarcastic about China's new consumerism, it's in part because He Yong can't fully join in. It's difficult for He Yong to get permission to go to Hong Kong for concerts like this, and on the mainland, there's nothing like them. Rock concerts are almost completely banned in China. Just being a part of the rock scene is a kind of passive dissonance. This Hong Kong concert drew thousands from all over Asia. Smelling money, promoters circled eagerly. One called it the biggest event of the year.
Hu Yong's lifestyle isn't really what you'd expect from a superstar.
My friends told me that my tapes sell very well. Considering that you're in the rock and roll generation, you guys are the best. They sell really well. Your concerts are great. So how is it that you are still... I still can't afford my own studio. If I were to waste a lot of money on a studio, I wouldn't know what to eat the next day.
Money is the rockers' lament of the 90s. In the 80s, the cry was more spiritual. June 1989. Tiananmen Square. In the mid-1980s, liberalization swept across this society. Rock music came with it and fed on the hopes of the era.
I feel the 80s were a particularly good time, a very precious time for me. Everything was so fresh.
Caught up in the spirit of the time, He Yong and other musicians played for the students. China's music scene has never been the same.
When I was hanging out with a friend a couple of days ago, we agreed the 80s were really the golden period of rock and roll in China. It's already over.
Today, He Yong's music is about alienation. His 1994 CD is called Garbage Dump.
The world we live in is a garbage dump. People writhe on it like worms. We swallow our conscience and shit ideology. Is there any hope? My father.
China's future is by no means certain. The country is troubled by a host of problems, from pollution to corruption to a bleak record on human rights. Those who have tasted wealth and freedom may want more and more.
This is about people's standard of living. In the 90s, people's standard of living has gotten much higher.
My next plan? That'd be a car. Yes, a car.
If China could be just like America, that rich, that free, that'd be great.
Chinese people are eager to get wealthy. After 40-some years, and they were in a lot of sort of political struggles, etc. They would like to now have more time dedicated to the economic growth so that they can have better life.
In China's first Gallup poll, 68% said their personal philosophy is to work hard and get rich. As 1.2 billion people gear up to attain wealth and prosperity, the world had better take notice. The economic revolution taking place in this ancient culture will reverberate around the globe.
Emerging Powers is supported by IBM. And by the Ford Motor Company, where quality is job one. With additional funding provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by the annual financial support of viewers like you.